Chinese-American entrepreneur and now author Fu Ping has remained a hot topic in the Chinese media in recent days, mainly due to her memoirs which were published late last year. The book, entitled Bend Not Break, A Life in Two Worlds, tells the story of Fu's early life in China during the Cultural Revolution and later her reinvention of herself as a highly successful entrepreneur after arriving in the US in 1984. However, many Chinese contemporaries of the co-founder and CEO of software company Geomagic have complained that her book is riddled with inaccuracies and outright fallacies. She writes that she was taken from her parents, abused as she worked in a factory, and then imprisoned and forced to leave China after triggering an international outcry when her thesis on female infanticide was published in the People's Daily newspaper. Now, Soochow University, where Fu studied from 1978 to 1982, has chimed in too. First on its website and later on at a press conference, the university has accused her of damaging its reputation and rejected many of the claims made in Fu's book. Amongst these, that finger-checking of female students was used to ensure they weren't pregnant, that she spoke only a few words of English when she arrived in the US, or that Fu wrote a thesis on female infanticide while at Soochow. At the recent press conference, the university urged Fu to take back what it said were false allegations and apologise, or the university would take legal measures. In the wake of the press conference, BON interviewed a number of Fu Ping's former teachers and classmates at Soochow University to hear what they said and, of course, what Chinese net users' thoughts are on the whole issue. Let's now join our researcher Zedong in the newsroom. So first off, Esther, with more and more media coverage about Fu Ping and her memoirs here in China, I guess Chinese net users have been making their views known as usual. What are they saying?
Well, yes, they certainly have. But first, I'd like to share some video clips from a BON interview with some of Fu Ping's contemporaries at Soochow University, both teachers and classmates who had first-hand experience of knowing her. Ni Junqiang was Fu's teacher during her junior and senior years at Soochow University and had this impression of her.
During college, Fu Ping was very smart and good at writing, but she was always absent from school. And her claims that her English was not good is total nonsense.
And Hu Zhenfang was a college classmate.
My impression of Fu Ping is she was quite fashionable, and she was the first one among us who wore high-heeled shoes and sung Russian songs. But she skipped lots of classes.
As for Chinese net users' opinions about her, well, they are really quite divergent. But I'd say the majority of net users are not supporters. Like this poster Ning Jinwu Siyu, who has this blunt assessment on Weibo.com. After feeling that Fu Ping suffers from paranoia and delusions, don't pay any attention to what she says or writes. And Tianshang Laoying has this. I bet Fu is using all this controversy to boost the sales and her royalties. By fabricating such stories, she can get attention and then sell her book. But I have to say at the same time that a considerable amount of net users argue that Fu Ping deserves some slack. One typical example on this site is posted on sciencenet.cn. I suggest people read her English memoir first before making any comment. After all, translations can cause some misunderstandings. And I don't think her remarks that she could only speak a few English words when she first went to the US contradict with that she could get high marks in college English exams. Dumb English is nothing new to Chinese learners today, never mind that it was 1978. And maybe I should just explain that phrase, dumb English, which in China describes someone who can get excellent marks in a written English exam, but can't string 2 or 3 words together when it comes to speaking because they've never practiced oral English.
Now, Soochow University said it called this press conference to refute, as it said, some of the claims made in Fu's book, especially regarding the university itself, and that's certainly drawn more attention to the story. But have they proven their point? Whom do net users seem to believe, Fu Ping or the university?
Well, again, there's a clear division of opinions. A lot of people stand firmly on the university side and even call for more drastic action. First, listen to this poster from Anhui. The university should have organized this press conference a long time ago. Bring this shameless person into disrepute. And this poster on iPhone.com can't agree more. Fu Ping's book is full of lies. I support the university taking her to court. But there are also a certain number of posters that aren't buying the university's line. For example, this poster from Heilongjiang, who, to be fair, seemed to have a personal grudge against academia, says, I'd rather believe Fuping than the university. You know why? Because nowadays, Chinese universities have no principles or moral bottom line. They are simply organizations for cheating students out of their money. And then we have this poster on Sohu.com, who seems quite familiar with Fu's memoir. I think the Soochow University staff didn't really read Fu's book. For example, she said in the book that she came across infanticide during research for her thesis, but this was never completed and the research stopped. So of course there's no such thesis. And it's possible that she was put into prison secretly and for a brief time, and others don't know. And about the figure checking for pregnancy, well, that was a misunderstanding caused by the American co-writer of the book. And a month ago, when the book was published, this was cleared up. And I've also seen some posters discussing why the university held a press conference at this particular time. On this issue, Ni Junqiang, the teacher we heard from earlier, gives us his reason.
My friends in the US and Canada telephoned me after reading her book. They said to me, "You seem to be a very agreeable person. How could you persecute students in such a cruel way?" I feel compelled to stand up and expose her lies. Otherwise, it would mean I acquiesce in the so-called persecution.
While some net users speculated the press conference is likely due to upcoming events which may raise the profile of the book, as this poster from topchinesenews.com explains. The American Library Association is to invite Fuping to deliver a speech this weekend, and will recommend her book to 120,000 public libraries in the U.S.
Well, each side certainly seems to be sticking to its story, and Fuping has yet to comment, it seems, on the university press conference. But one thing for sure is that her disputed descriptions of events during the Cultural Revolution particularly seem to have sparked the most interest from Chinese readers of the book. What's being said online about that?
Well, on this question, many posters put their intense interest down to the lack of official description or even discussion of this chaotic period in China's recent history. With so little mention of this time, many Chinese have been kept in dark for decades, and the result is they tend to believe whatever they hear about that time. Like Niu Dengke, who has this take. I think our government and the Soochow University should first admit that during the Cultural Revolution period, we did persecute lots of people. The reason Fuping's words have attracted so much attention is because we have always held such a secretive attitude towards that period of history. And lastly, I should mention I've seen some posters using the controversy to get in a political dig at the U.S. I'll finish up with this comment from Zhou Kezhen. I'm wondering if the freedom of speech in the U.S. includes the freedom to tell and spread lies. If not, should Fu face a lawsuit in the U.S. once her remarks are proved false? Actually, I found that such lies and fabrications are quite common in the Western media when they talk about countries like China. If the freedom of speech falls into the realm of politics, then how can it be considered a universal value?
Okay, thanks for that, Esther. And that was China Take researcher Esther Dong with some comment from classmates and contemporaries of entrepreneur Fuping from Soochow University, all to do with that controversy over her memoirs published late last year. Next up on China Take, some of the top trending phrases on China's most popular search engines.